too. She is smiling here in the pews, there at the church doors. You must all remember Lisa's smile. And, by the way, she had a twinkle in her eye that made you think she knew a secret nobody else knew. She smiled when she was asked to serve this church in a myriad of ways. She smiled when she offered to bring food to church suppers, or her wit and her wisdom to the women's retreats. And no surprise, by the way, she smiled the most broadly when she looked at her son, or when she had a story to tell you about Jonathan. And Jonathan, there were some whoppers. And while Jonathan grew up with the love and care of this whole family clan, Lisa, as a single mom, was the minute-by-minute, day-to-day go-to person for Jonathan for everything. He was always number one in her life. He remembers her patience, her generosity, her unconditional love, and, by the way, her wicked sense of humor. Lisa could be so very quiet, but then she would say something so outrageous it would send you into gales of laughter, completely unexpected. Her sense of humor stood her in very good stead, especially when life got to be challenging. I think we all remember Lisa as gentle, but her gentleness could never, ever be mistaken for weakness. Her physical body lost strength, but her spirit was so incredibly powerful. She pushed through when many of us would have given up. She never let those things which had so harshly insulted her body define her. It was so hard to walk, the incredibly painful arthritis, that awful, awful feeling of not being able to fill your lungs. She never equated what was insulting her body with who she was at the very core of her precious being. And with grace and dignity, she adopted those things which would help her carry on. She made friends with her cane, her walker, the oxygen that was her constant companion. It was unimaginably difficult for her to feel her own physical abilities waning, to have to ask for help. She was so fiercely independent, and she was much too young to be forced to cope with disease that tried its very best to diminish her. There were many things that Lisa could not have in this life, but she did have the one single thing that she wanted the very most, and that was a child. And by the way, she named him Jonathan, because it means gift from God. And she brought Jonathan, her sweet, here to raise him in the faith in this church. And generously and graciously, she invited all of us, as she had invited her family, to help raise him. Author Anne Lamott, who, like Lisa, is a single mom, Anne Lamott wrote these words in a chapter entitled, "Why I Make Sam," that is her son, "go to church." They could be Lisa's words for Jonathan. She writes, "The main reason I bring Sam to church is to give him what I found in the world, which is to say, a path and a little light to see by. Most of the people I know who have what I want, which is to say, purpose, heart, balance, gratitude, joy. They are people with a deep sense of spirituality. They are people in community who pray or practice their faith. They are Buddhists, they are Jews, they are Christians, people banding together to work on themselves and on human rights for others. They follow a brighter light than the glimmer of their own candle. They are part of something beautiful. And that's why I think Lisa brought Jonathan to church. If a parent is a child's very first image of God, then Jonathan knew from the very beginning that God is love. Lisa was an overflowing font of unconditional love. She taught Jonathan about God by example and with a faith that was deep and quiet and childlike. There was table grace in home and bedtime prayers and the practiced humility to rely on your faith to get you through when life hands you challenging challenges. By the way, while Lisa's favorite role was being a mom, she was also fulfilled and wonderful in her chosen work. She was admired by her co-workers, and she counted them as friends. She was sought out as a consultant even after she retired as a registrar at UMass Boston. She had important and meaningful work to do, and there was no physical infirmity that would stop her from giving her all. When things got too hard for Lisa, she found alternative ways to embrace life. She was a voracious reader, a big Netflix fan. She had that great sense of humor, and she loved to laugh or to make you laugh, and she relished the telling of a good story. Although a very private person herself, Lisa was genuinely interested in the details of your life. And when a person gives you their undivided attention or remembers to ask you about things that are important to you, it is the greatest gift that they can give, and she gave that freely. She had a great memory for details. She would remember to ask you about the joys or sorrows in your family. She would remember your children's achievements or challenges, or your struggle with a job change, or your heartbreak over one of life's cruel insults. Lisa would laugh as you chased your toddler around the coffee hour. Her kind and sympathetic eyes would look deeply into yours if tears were rolling down your cheeks. Lisa would offer you encouragement when she felt that you had run out of faith in yourself. She was highly attuned to people, and she genuinely cared about all of the details of their lives. And by the way, that attention to what was important to you was also reflected in her Christmas shopping. Lisa would spend hours on the internet choosing just the right gift, the one that would have the wow factor when you opened it, the one that said, I care enough about you to choose something that you are always going to treasure. This past year, she had her Christmas list already, and when she died before Christmas, Becky fulfilled Lisa's wishes and made sure that each very special person received a carefully chosen gift of love from Lisa. In the end, Lisa was very aware that she was dying. She went through all of the necessary legal rituals one has to do before leaving this earth, and she went through them with dignity and with grace. In her last days, she was brave, she was honest, and she unabashedly expressed her love. It is more rare than you might think, this brave professing of love when life is slipping away. Speaking last words of love takes enormous courage. There was no fear in her dying. I hope that some long ago learned scripture began to echo and resonate in her head. I hope she heard God say, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you, Lisa, hope and eternal future." I hope some great old hymn was playing in her heart when she found herself truly leaning on the everlasting arms. I hope she felt some angel take her hand. I hope she saw the faces of her parents coming into view. And by the way, Joe, no doubt, had a name tag for her. She was a newcomer in heaven. But Jesus knows Lisa's name, and he has taken her unto himself, that where he is, she may be also. And this is what heaven heard him say: "This is my beloved daughter Lisa, with whom I am so well pleased." Lisa no longer relies on a cane or a walker, and she has been given the sweet and deep breath of eternal life. So, by the way, when the time comes to leave this earth, I don't believe that anything serves us as well as a childlike faith like Lisa's. There is no ancient philosophy, no theological discourse that is as comforting as seeing heaven through the eyes of a child. A friend of mine, another single mom like Lisa, told me this recently while playing with Legos. Her 7-year-old son asked her out of the blue, "So, Mom, you're going to die before me, right?" She answered, "Yes, I'm much older than you are. I'm going to die before you." "And Mom, you're going to go to heaven, right?" "Oh, yes, I will be going to heaven." "So, Mom, when I get there, you're going to be there, right?" "Yes, I will be there when you arrive." "So, Mom, what do you think we should do first?" "Probably visit Grandma and Grandpa." "Okay, we'll do that." At such poignant times, when we stand at the threshold of this life and the next, I think that celebration is the enemy of faith. Overthinking what will become of us, what has become of our loved one, pales in comparison to the uncomplicated faith of a little child. When we are floundering in grief and nothing else makes any sense, nothing else helps, why not embrace a childlike faith and see, imagine Lisa making her way into heaven, stars all around her, moving and still, high and low, God's love as light, beautiful and twinkling out, a warm welcome for Lisa. Through our faith, this is what we believe. She is now in the nearer presence of God, and she'll be there when the rest of us make our way, and she will be smiling because now She really does know a secret that the rest of us can only wonder about. Along with that image, I would share with you now a poem by Ilsa Richardson. She wrote it upon the death of her own mother, and I offer it to you as our collective and heartfelt prayer for Lisa. Fly free, sweet spirit. Soar the universe, dance the heavens. Leave the tired, worn-out body that has sheltered you, lately imprisoned you, but once served you so well. Fly free to sweet reunion with beloved family and well-remembered friends. I would not hold you here, bright soul, to decrease senses, limited movement, or increased pain. My heart thrills to your new freedom, to your new sense of joy, and your new way of being. Fly free, sweet spirit. Fly free. Amen.
Kim Lavely, Lisa's sister, apparently the one who did no work at home. Jonathan has asked me to read a story that Lisa used to read to him when he was a little boy. It's called Love You Forever by Robert Munsch. The mother held her new baby and very slowly rocked him back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And while she held him, she sang, I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. The baby grew. He grew and he grew and he grew. He grew until he was 2 years old, and he ran all around the house. He pulled all the books off the shelves. He pulled all the food out of the refrigerator, and he took his mother's watch and flushed it down the toilet. Sometimes his mother would say, this kid is driving me crazy. But at night time, when that 2-year-old was quiet, she opened the door to his room, crawled across the floor, looked up over the side of his bed, and if he was really asleep, she picked him up and rocked him back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And while she rocked him, she sang, I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always, as long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. The little boy grew. He grew and he grew and he grew. He grew until he was 9 years old. He never wanted to come in for dinner. He never wanted to take a bath. And when Grandma visited, he always said bad words. Sometimes his mother wanted to sell him to the zoo. But at night time, when he was asleep, the mother quietly opened the door to his room, crawled across the floor, and looked up over the side of the bed. If he was really asleep, she picked up that 9-year-old boy and rocked him back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And while she rocked him, she sang, I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. The boy grew. He grew and he grew and he grew. He grew until he was a teenager. He had strange friends and he wore strange clothes and he listened to strange music. Sometimes the mother felt like she was in a zoo. But at night time, when that teenager was asleep, the mother opened the door to his room, crawled across the floor, and looked up over the side of the bed. If he was really asleep, she picked up that great big boy and rocked him back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And while she rocked him, she sang, I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. That teenager grew. He grew and he grew and he grew. He grew until he was a grown-up man. He left home and he got a house across town. But sometimes on dark nights, the mother got into her car and drove across town. If all the lights in her son's house were out, she opened his bedroom window, crawled across the floor, looked up over the side of his bed. And if that great big man was really asleep, she picked him up and rocked him back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And while she rocked, she sang, I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. Well, that mother got older. She got older and older and older. One day she called to her son and said, you better come and see me because I'm very old and sick. So her son came to see her. When he came in the door, she tried to sing the song. She sang, I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always. But she couldn't finish because she was too old and sick. The son went to his mother, he picked her up and he rocked her back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And he sang this song. I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my mommy you'll be. When the son came home that night, he stood for a long time at the top of the stairs. Then he went into the room where his very new baby daughter was, where she was sleeping. He picked her up in his arms and very slowly rocked her back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And while he rocked her, he sang, I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby, you'll will be.
You can see in the program that, I'm sorry, Tony, would you like to say it? I'm just going to say you can see in the program that we'll be singing together hymn number 485, and that Jay and Tony will be singing the first two verses, verse 1 and 2, and then the congregation sings verse 3, just those 3 verses. I'd like to invite you to stand and stretch for a moment as you're able, so we can sing together.
Thanks for having me. I just, like I say, we work with Jonathan and Becky on playing the service. We were reminded, as many of you do, my parents planned their own memorial services down to scripture and hymns and other messages like don't wear black and no crying aloud. Kim kind of surprised Jay and me in this planning process with Jonathan. And I want to thank Kim for the inspiration to have a red rose for each of us as, I think, Lisa's favorite color, and it being Valentine's Day and tomorrow being her birthday. I think she thought it was a very nice symbol of our love for her. But then she surprised Jay and me and said, you know, Lisa always liked hearing you guys sing. And would you sing something at the service? So.
We always get some microphone. And then on this occasion, I think it'd be great.
My name is Lavely, and Lisa is my aunt. I was one of her nieces. I will not be discussing today any games or piano lessons. Instead, I'll be reading a Sanskrit poem that was special to Lisa. I just want to give a little bit of context for it so you understand the significance to her. My father spoke earlier this morning of Timanis, the camp in Maine that my brother Benjamin and my cousin Jonathan attended. Like the sister camp that I attended with my sister, Timanis is a magical place tucked in the woods of Maine, and Lisa always loved visiting Jonathan there. It's a place where he flourished, and she could see how alive he was there, and she loved watching him grow up in that special place. The poem I will be reading was often read at the chapel at Timanus. Lisa liked this poem so much that she actually had it printed on a poster and had it framed, and it hangs in her home. And Jonathan selected this poem as a wonderful way to honor and remember Lisa. So in Lisa's memory, I now read to you, Look to This Day. Look to this day, for it is life, the very life of life. In its brief course lie all the verities and realities of your existence. The bliss of growth, the glory of action, the splendor of beauty. For yesterday is already a dream, and tomorrow is only a vision. But today, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Look well, therefore, to this day. Such is the salutation of the dawn.
Good morning. I'm Jonathan. I'm Lisa's son. Thank you all for coming out today to celebrate the wonderful woman she was. My mother always put me first in her life, except on one occasion, and that was the day I was born. She had me by a C-section, so she was put under anesthetic. And when she woke up, the nurse came into her room and asked her how she was doing. She said, I'm doing really good, but, you know, could I get some breakfast? The nurse said, we can do that for you, but would you like to see your son first? Mother said, yes, but also still bring breakfast, please. Anyone who knew my mother and Jomo knew that they were very similar in thought and mind, and therefore at times they had the best and the worst relationship, but it was always solidified with love. My mother was also very much like Jobo, in that she kept a lot of her comments and her thoughts to herself, but when push came to shove, she would let you know what she thought. She was always good with the quick quip of humor. The relationship I had with my mom was unlike most mothers and sons. It was just us my whole life. My mom had to be my mom, she had to be my dad, she had to be my siblings. Not an easy role for a woman to fill to a growing son, especially during those surly teenage years. I do want to point out that I didn't do any of the things that kid from the story did. I didn't tear books down or have weird clothes. But she fought for everything she had, and she fought until the end. Someone we can all model after. One of the things I'm most thankful for is her decision to move to Boston from Chicago when I was young. I was 3 years old when we moved here, because she wanted me to have a close relationship with Jomo and Jobo, which I did for many, many years growing up. I remember every Sunday we would come up to church and then go back to their houses right down the street at 304 Central Street. Becky and Jay and Kim and I drove by, and it looks just like it did all those years ago. A lot more snow in front of it now. Don't know what that's all about. I know that my mom and Jomo and Joe are in this room with us now, telling me no crying, and I know Jomo especially is sitting at the back, reminding me to enunciate and speak loudly enough for the person in the last row to be able to hear me. So I hope I'm doing as she would have requested. One of my fond memories, and it was especially the story that Kim read growing up, was my mother would always read me a story at bedtime, and she would rub my head to help me fall asleep, which was great. I'd always try and convince her to rub my head a little bit longer. As she got older, the requests started coming from her for me to rub her head. So I realized in the long run she was just training me. Great memories of Christmases growing up over the years. We would always come to the early service here, and then go back to Joe and Jopo's house, and then when they moved, we would go back to our house. And we had this great tradition where Jopo and I would go out and search for Santa Claus, because as a child all my life, I had a desire to capture Santa Claus. I didn't want to keep him, I just wanted to get my hands on him, maybe snap a photo, and then I would let him keep going with his deliveries. And my mother and Jomo's job was to just simply stay at the house, and if he managed to get by Jopo and I and get into the house, they just needed to hold on to him and signal for us, and we would race back. And every year they would ring that bell saying that, hey, we've got him, Jopo and Lisa, we've got him. Jopo and I would race back, and he would have just gone out the door. The presents would be under the tree, and I would be thoroughly annoyed at Jopo because I would spend the whole year coming up with these plans. One involved a rope. But the woman couldn't seem to get it right, so nevertheless we would have a nice Christmas dinner, and then open presents on Christmas Eve, sitting by the fire. We also had every Christmas a symbol tree, which Joe and Jopo had with the kids growing up, and every year they would pick a significant symbol that represented a big change in the year. My mother continued that tradition for us over the years. Another great memory I have was on days going to work with my mom. If I didn't have school, if it was a snow day, which they've had like 8 this year, so. But I would get, all my supplies and my notebooks and my pens and my markers and my Game Boy. We don't have any youngsters here that laugh at Game Boy. And I'd get in the car and we would head into her office, and I'd go into the office with her, and she would sit at her desk, and she would get going on work, and I would take out my stuff, and for about 15 minutes I'd had enough of it, and I would ask my mom when we could go home. She said, well, I still have to work all day, and I said, well, my attention is not up to an 8-hour day, so. But she was good. She'd let me play on one of the computers. My mother, who was so good with computers in her job, I'm going to tell you, the first time I saw her work with a computer, we got our first computer at home. I was familiar with them from school. I was in about 4th or 5th grade, and I had been off playing with my friends, and I came home, and she was in the den playing with the computer. I said, Mom, how do you like it? What do you think? She said, it's great, but I don't like that when I move the mouse up, the cursor on the screen goes down, and when I move it to the left, it goes to the right. I said, I got you, Mom, and I turned it around. Problem solved. I could tell stories and memories about my mom for probably almost as long as Jay was up. I'm just anyone who knew my mom, she was the love of my life, and I was hers. There was never an instance, except for that whole breakfast thing, which was gorgeous and Joe. True story, though. She never missed any soccer games. She never missed any recitals at church. She never missed any school performances. Anything that I did, she was always there. And she loved me, and I loved her. And towards the end, it was more, I was taking care of her. But she was there, and she fought to still be with me. And I truly believe that she fought as hard and long as she did so that she could still be with me. And this past couple of years, she got to know my wonderful girlfriend, Becky, and they both loved each other. They did not always see eye to eye, which is hard to imagine. Becky would go to put the dishes away from the dishwasher, and she would say, you know, Lisa, is there a particular way you want these put away? And she would say no, and then Becky would start to put them away. My mother would say, well, that's not how I would put them away. Great one was the latch on our door has been sticking lately, and it wouldn't latch properly, so Becky and I are constantly having to slam it and wiggle it, and slam it and wiggle it. My mother would make fun of us, and Becky and I went away on vacation in early October, and a good friend of mine offered to come to the house in the mornings and evenings to help my mom get up in the morning and get settled, and then check on her in the evening. And so when we got back from the vacation, it was one of the first days, and we were struggling with the door. My mother just turned, because she was sitting in her chair right there, she turned and she said, well, Ariane could do it fine every single time. Have Ariane come back and she can do it. Yeah, I mean, I love my mom, and I'll never stop. I know she's always going to be with me. And I know how much she was loved by everyone who knew her, how much she loved all of you. I do have one final little remembrance that I'd like to give to end off with. When I was in preschool, we had an art project that the teachers, I mean, I was probably 3 or 4, so it was very much directed by them, not the maniac children that we were. But they had us make our handprints in a plaster, so it was an indentation of our little hand in plaster. They mounted it on red construction paper, and then underneath it was a poem that said, "This is my hand, so tiny and small, for you to hang upon the wall, so you can watch as years go by, how we grow, my hand and I." It said, "Love, Jonathan." It was very neat penmanship, so it was clearly written by me at that age. And my mother always kept everything from school that I brought home. I don't know how, but it's always kept it. And years later, I was in a sentimental mood, and I went looking through a box she had of old school projects that I had brought home, looking for this particular thing that I had made for her. And I couldn't find it. It was December. And I'm looking and looking, and it was nowhere to be found. I went out to my mom. I said, "Mom, what happened to that handprint with the poem that I gave you when I was in preschool?" She just sort of looked at me. She said, "I don't know. If it's not in the box, it probably just got thrown away." I'm immediately was crushed, just waterworks down my face. And I ran into my room and I lay on my bed and I just started sobbing. I didn't consider myself a very sentimental child, but apparently I was attached to this item. And my mother just tossed it out. A couple of minutes later, I say minutes, it was probably like immediately after, because my mother wasn't one to torture me. My mother came in with a cardboard box, and she said, I had been saving this for you as a Christmas present, but I want you to have it now. And I opened the box, and there she had it matted and framed, and there was my handprint with the poem, cut out along that red paper, matted in a beautiful frame that is still hanging up in the hallway to this day. And it was a couple days before she passed. It was when she was at Tippett House. I was home for the evening and I was looking at this poem, and I think I was channeling my grandfather, because Joko wrote some great poetry in his later years, and I just had a thought for a continuation of that poem. So I'm going to read the beginning of it again, and then I'm going to read the continuation. This is my hand, so tiny and small, for you to hang upon the wall, so you can watch as years go by how we grow, my hand and I. This is my hand, all big and grown, yours to hold forever and own. I'll love you forever, hold you and keep you calm. Forever you'll be, always be my mom. And I shared that with her just the day before she passed. And she smiled and she said she loved it. I love you, Mom.
I want to reverse what you see here. You see prayers of thanksgiving and intercession. I want to move that to this time. We've said all the words that we need to say, but St. Paul once said that the Spirit intercedes for us when the words fail. I just want to give us a moment to breathe and to be in silence and remember everything that we've heard. The Lord be with you. Let us pray.